All right, it's 2 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. So today I plan to talk about a particular set of FCC licenses called Educational Broadband Service, or EBS licenses. I'm basically planning on going over the benefits to the schools that hold the licenses and potentially the schools that would get them. Cover a brief history of the licenses and their current uses. And most importantly, we're going to discuss the problem of issuing new licenses and our proposed solution to get these new licenses issued. So I'd like to provide a little bit of background about who we are and who I am. My name is James Bridges, and I'm with Select Spectrum. We're a specialized FCC license brokerage firm. So basically, we help parties buy and sell FCC licenses in the secondary market. My primary responsibility at Select Spectrum is managing the 2.5 gigahertz auctions, which include the EBS licenses and then also the commercial band as well, the BRS licenses. Since being founded in 2010, Select Spectrum has completed over 220 transactions, with 182 of those occurring in the 2.5 gigahertz band. And so we actually represent clients that hold a variety of licenses and a variety of different bands, including the 150, 220, 700, 900 megahertz, PCS licenses, and of course the 2.5 gigahertz EBS and BRS licenses as well. So now that the introduction is kind of out of the way, we'll go over the many ways that schools that actually have these licenses are benefiting. The primary purpose of the licenses is for two-way fixed and mobile transmission. So many wireless operators are using the licenses to provide broadband internet to unserved or underserved areas. Actually, current FCC rules allow license holders to lease the licenses to commercial operators in exchange for royalty income. The leases also typically provide the license holder with a certain number of free devices or credits for the license holder to use on the operator's network for free. A small number of schools have actually built their own network to support their educational mission. This is kind of few and far between, though, just due to the financial and technical requirements needed to build and maintain a wireless network. Instead, most schools opt to lease to a commercial operator that is an expert in the field, and the commercial operator builds a network. But whether the license holder chooses to build its own network or lease to an operator, there is clearly a tremendous economic and social and technological benefits to the schools that have these EBS licenses. So now we'll go over a little bit of the history of the EBS licenses. So many schools and colleges may not have actually originally applied for an EBS license because they were actually first used for instructional television. In fact, the band was called ITFS, or Instructional Television Fixed Service, instead of the EBS that it is today. There's actually a handful of licenses that are still using this for instructional television, but most have switched over to the new two-way fixed and mobile transmission rules. There were a few rule changes in the 70s and 90s that allowed license holders to lease excess capacity to commercial operators, but the most significant change came in 2005 when the FCC approved the new two-way fixed and mobile rules, which is what we have today, actually. So the change to allow for the two-way fixed and mobile rules prompted companies like Sprint to use the frequencies to build out their mobile network. Sprint actually used these licenses as part of its 4G and I guess soon to be the 5G network as well. In addition to Sprint, there are many smaller companies such as WISP, which are wireless internet service providers, that have created a fixed wireless network and use the licenses to provide broadband internet access to homes and businesses. So the fixed wireless networks typically consist of a directional antenna that is mounted on the roof or an eave of a house, like the one in the picture on your screen, that transmits to a device on a tower. And because it's higher, it's outdoors, has an external antenna, the capacity of the fixed wireless networks is typically much higher than that of the mobile networks. So most EBS license holders have leased to Sprint. They're actually the major player within this band. I think they leased over 1,800 of the 2,300 available licenses. And then actually in 2013, their annual lease payments to EBS license holders exceeded $300 million. But like I said just a minute ago, Other smaller operators are using these licenses. This is largely due to the reduction in the cost of the equipment over the years. There are actually at least 60 separate companies that are operating on 2.5 gigahertz licenses. These are not just subsidiaries of another company, but over 60 individual companies operating. Some of the larger WISPs, which I mentioned a little while ago, are Speed Connect, Rise Broadband. They're actually the largest WISP. I think they have 200,000 some subscribers. Whisper ISP, Red Zone Wireless. They actually lease all of the EBS licenses in Maine. So earlier I mentioned that EBS licenses can be leased to commercial operators in exchange for royalty payments. So I'd like to provide an example of what the licenses are worth. So these licenses are valued on a megahertz pop valuation, which is the bandwidth of the license, and a typical standard license is 22.5 megahertz multiplied by the population the license covers. So for this example, let's just say we have a license that covers 120,000 people. Now the guidance that we provide when we discuss our auctions is 4 cents per megahertz pop for a rural license. More densely populated areas or that cover major markets will obviously demand a higher valuation than the 4 cents. But for this example, just assume the rural license in 120,000 people. So if you multiply the 120,000 times the 22.5, that'll give you 2.7 million megahertz pops. And one example payment structure that we might get using 4 cents on that 2.7 million megahertz pop would be an upfront payment of $10,800 with an initial monthly payment of $626 that increases by 3% each year. So in year 1, it's $626, year 2, $644, year 3, $664, and so on and so on. So over a 30-year lease, that would result in the total payments being just under $368,000. So this kind of brings us to the whole point of the webinar. I spent the last couple of slides talking about how great these licenses are. Well, unfortunately, about half the U.S. geographically is uncovered by EBS licenses. And in 1995, the FCC put a freeze on issuing new licenses, resulting in many schools and communities missing out on the financial and technological benefits of having them. So the map on the screen shows the license coverage for one particular channel block, the A1 block actually. So the green areas for the green polygons are the existing licenses, whereas the pink area is how the existing licenses would expand under the consensus proposal, which I'll cover on the next slide. And the white areas represent all of the areas that would be issued a new license. So you'll notice a vast majority of the areas that are shaded white are in rural America, which may have a difficult time getting access to broadband. It is actually over 1,200 counties in the U.S. that would be issued at least one new license. So this actually represents about 38 million people. And if you think about it, that's a substantial amount of area and people that would be impacted by the FCC issuing a new license. So in order to get the FCC to issue new licenses, many prominent organizations within the EBS community submitted a consensus proposal to the FCC. So the organizations are the National EBS Association, or NEBSA. They represent another advocacy group for the EBS license holders. There's the Catholic Technology Network, or CTN, the Hispanic Information Telecommunications Network, or HITN, and the Wireless Communication Association, which represents a lot of the commercial operators. So the consensus proposal basically states that if the license touches a portion of a county, it'll expand to cover the entire county. So that would be that pink area that I just mentioned, unless it runs into another license's expansion. In places where there are no licenses, new applications would be accepted on a first-come, first-served basis. New licenses would actually be issued by county, which is a little different than the current rules, but makes it a lot easier for the FCC because it fits the way the rest of the licenses that they use are issued, and just fits their database a little bit better. So this is actually an example of how a license would expand under the consensus proposal. The green polygon is the existing geographic service area of the license, and the pink portion represents how the license would expand under the consensus proposal. So as you can see in the top right portion of the green section, it touches a portion of that county and expands to cover the entire county. But if you look at the top left portion of the green circle, you'll see that license expands into about half the county it touches. That's basically because it runs into another license expansion. And the bottom left, there's no expansion because it's already butted up against another license. So unfortunately, even with the consensus proposal in front of the FCC, they've been slow to make any decisions as to what to do with the unlicensed areas. In order to encourage the FCC to make a decision quicker, we founded EBPARC, or Educators and Broadband Providers for American Rural Communities. The basic concept behind EBPARC is for commercial operators and educational institutions that do not have licenses to encourage the FCC to move forward with a consensus proposal. And the goal is simple. We want to influence the FCC to issue new licenses to educational institutions at the earliest possible date. We do not anticipate schools to experience any costs associated with EBPARC. We believe it will actually only take a little bit of your time, and we have actually attempted to reduce that time required from schools that wish to participate by drafting template letters that they can send to the FTC, which I'll explain a little bit more about that later. But yeah, we're really just trying to make this as easy as possible for the schools and commercial operators that choose to participate. So why does EBPARC matter? We believe the additional push from unlicensed educational institutions may be the extra incentive needed to get the FCC to make a decision regarding EBS white space. After all, this is the group that will be impacted the most by the consensus proposal. It's not the existing licenses. Yeah, they will expand, but ultimately the group that will be impacted the most are the ones that will get the brand new licenses at areas that have never been issued licenses. Also, issuing new licenses is consistent with the FCC goals. So the FCC wants to encourage broadband access in rural America, make more spectrum available, stimulate rural infrastructure improvements at zero cost to the taxpayers. And really the only cost associated with issuing new licenses would be to update the FCC database, which in the grand scheme of things is just a drop in the bucket. And also to support the education mission for rural educators. So we feel that EBPARC and this whole initiative will help make the consensus proposal a priority for the FCC. So why do we need your help? We need the help of the educational institutions because little progress has been made by the FCC on the consensus proposal. I think this primarily because many schools are unaware of EBS licenses and the benefits of owning one. We need the educational institutions to tell the FCC why this is important to have for their faculty, staff, students, communities. And like I said before, the schools without licenses will be impacted the most and should be talking to their local politicians and the FCC about this issue. You know, this is very important. We actually believe this is so important. Select Spectrum, our company, has actually hired a lobbyist to help make this a congressional issue, not just an FCC issue. Actually, a representative from Select Spectrum, an EBS licensee, and a commercial operator operating on EBS licenses met with the congressional staff members on Monday, the 16th of October, to discuss this issue. And the groups that they met with are the Energy and Commerce Committee, the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, the Subcommittee for Communication, Technology, Innovation, and the Internet. Overall, the meetings went very well, and we received a lot of positive feedback, with actually one staff member volunteering to make a call to the FCC to ask why they aren't doing anything with these licenses and what's going on exactly. You know, just dig in a little bit more information. There's still a lot of work to do from this standpoint, but I think we're on the right track and pushing the right buttons. You know, as far as this goes, you know, making it more of a congressional issue, not just an FCC issue. So there are basically two parties we'll be working with as part of this project, the schools and the commercial operators. We're asking the schools to file template letters with the FCC describing how important it is to obtain one of the licenses. As of now, we think the letters will be sufficient, but it may be beneficial for schools to attend conference calls or attend meetings with FCC or Congress. Like I said, we actually had one, you know, EBS license holder school attend the meeting on Monday with the congressional staff members. So the other party we'll actually be working with are the commercial operators. We're asking them to use their local contacts to partner with the educational institution in an area that's not yet licensed, to encourage them to file a letter with the FCC saying why these licenses are so important. It's the template letter that I mentioned a little while ago. And when the lobbyist arranges additional congressional or FCC meetings, it would be extremely beneficial to have experienced operators vouch for the capabilities of EBS licenses or talk about how important it would be to obtain a license in an area with lots of interference. Also, while we've hired a lobbyist for the first 3 months, we're asking for donations from commercial operators to continue the effort. We're realistic and recognize the effort will likely take longer than the 3 months. We've actually already received some donations from operators, and Select Spectrum actually intends to treat the donations to the lobbying effort as an investment and refund all donations put in by offering 50% credits towards future commissions from our auctions. We obviously need help with this. We can't do it alone. This has been in front of the FCC for a number of years and they've done nothing. So the more people that are supporting this project and initiative, the more likely the chances are that we'll have success. So we need as many schools as possible to file the letters and as many commercial operators that are backing this and supporting this financially and with the school's help as well. So now I'll open it up to any questions that you might have. My information's up on the screen. If you think of anything later or you'd like to follow up with me about something entirely different, we can do that as well. I plan to send everyone a summary of the congressional meetings along with the template letter that we recommended the schools file with the FCC. I actually also point out that the letter is only a template. We recommend schools change it to best fit their individual message. And it actually looks like we have a question here. So the question is EBPARC open to including current EBS licensees and membership as well? And yeah, we're absolutely open to that. Like I said, the more support we get from this, the better. And obviously I think that the schools that don't have the licenses will benefit the most. But the schools that have licenses and experience that expansion will obviously benefit as well. And as of now, we're just basically asking for a simple letter to be filed with FCC, and maybe a future meeting with Congress or the FCC. So absolutely, we'll take all the support that we can get for this initiative. So we have another question. It's where do we start to obtain an EBS license? We're a school that has not had one before. So, like I said earlier, the FCC put a freeze on issuing new licenses. They put a freeze in 1995. So, really, the only way to get it is through exemption. And I think over the years they've handed out maybe a half dozen or so. They're kind of few and far between, and there's a lot of limitations whenever you get a license with that exemption. So, typically, one of the limitations is you can't lease it. You have to actually build and maintain your own network, which realistically speaking in the rural areas where these new licenses are being issued, they're few and far between. That's not going to happen very often. That by no means that easy to do. So really what we're asking is if you can support this initiative, work with file the letter with FCC, and we think that will help in getting the FCC to open up the application process. Now once they do open up the application process, it'll be on a first come first served basis. And we can assist the schools that participate in EBPARC with any kind of paperwork that they might have with filing that. And we do have one more question. It is who's a lobbyist that Select Spectrum is using? It's actually a company called Total Spectrum. It's unrelated to Select Spectrum, just a coincidence where we share a name. And like I said, we've been working with them for just a very short period of time. We've already had the one meeting with Congress, and overall, I think it's going very well. So, we're going to continue that. We hope to continue that relationship and ideally get some donations from additional commercial operators to so that we can continue that relationship if it goes longer than that initial 3 months. So it doesn't look like we have any more questions right now. Like I said, if anyone has any additional questions later, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. We have additional information on our website, selectspectrum.com/EBPARC. And thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Like I said, feel free to contact me with any questions. Thank you.